Welcome, movie lovers, to the Cinematic Realms podcast. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Amy.
My wonderful, wonderful co-host for it seems like much longer, but you've been co-hosting with me on the YouTube live stream version of this show for the past couple months, I guess.
Yeah, I think I started in October, I want to say. So like 4 or 5 months
I
max.
think I think it's the pandemic. I think it's been stretching
Everything feels
everything out.
so long. 1 year feels like 5 years. I actually was thinking about this a couple of days ago because I realized that I'm gonna come up on some reunions, like high school reunions and such, and I'm like, has it been that long since that? I feel like it's been 50 years. Like all of 2020 seriously stretched out. And I mean, I guess we're about to go in the third month of 2021, so it's not like time isn't marching forward. I don't know. It's time is a concept right now, John.
Yeah. And what's really weird is just even if you look back to when I started doing this over on YouTube, it was about a year ago, which kind of feels really like a long time ago and also a short time ago. It's this weird mixture of stuff. Anyway, so we've just gone right into the chat. I guess we should set this up for the people who haven't, watched what we've been doing on YouTube. We are basically a movie enthusiasm show. It's not fair to say that we're a film criticism because I once
We're a
got
movie jazz hands show.
yeah, because I once got told actually that I was a film propagandist, meaning that I like to just talk really positive about movies that I love, and that's about
You're
it.
like a
But
promoter, kind of.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, you pick movies you like, John, and I started watching you probably 3 or 4 months in to your channel. So for those of you listening for the first time, he's on John Webster Film on YouTube. So you'll find him there because it was just John Webster for when he started this, and he had wonderful guests on. And I thought this guy's neat. He really likes movies. He talks about them passionately and very, very positively. You never hear him say anything negative. But then you had guests on who would push back a little bit. So I respected that you would have guests on, like for the Hobbit animated movie, where you were like, guys, this is awesome. And they're like, oh, sweet summer child.
and then is that when you started plotting to become my co-host?
Yes, that's when I decided I was going to take over your YouTube channel and make it Aemy Blackfyre Film. That has not happened yet, but one day. Um, and yeah. So we met through Here Be Dragons, where you co-host over on YouTube, and I
Wh- Which
actually,
which by the way is part of why this is now a podcast because
yeah.
it turns out that doing a YouTube live stream on both Saturday and Sunday is not good for one's mental health.
You need a weekend, John. Even right now, when there's no place to go, you still need it. And I actually came up with the name Cinematic Realms, so
You
I
did.
helped you rebrand.
Like as soon as I read that I was like, "Oh my god, that's perfect."
I
Because
gave you
it's
10, and that was my favorite, but I didn't want to be biased, so I just DM'd you. You're like, Amy, I think I should name it something that's not John Webster Film. Do you have suggestions? And I just quickly sent you like 8 or 10 ideas, and I really like Cinematic Realms because well, I say we because now I'm the co-host, but you at the time, it was your channel. You really like fantasy. I mean, we both do, but I was thinking about you at the time. I at the time had no plot to take over your channel, I believe. Maybe. Does it go back that far? We'll never know.
sure.
So yeah, Cinematic Realms was my favorite. And I also thought that it kind of gave an idea of a little bit of adventure or exploratory aspect to it. Because realm, you don't necessarily think of the real world.
Well, and also what I liked is Realms kind of, you can look at it in two ways. It does have sort of a fantastical connotation, but also, you could look at Realms as like a realm as a field of study.
Yeah.
And we, do take a look at and study films. Uh, and which, by the way, and the scope of this is going to kind of expand, I think, because we're going to be talking not just about films, but I think gradually we'll talk television and also maybe some things related to film and television, like occasionally some books. I have some ideas for, we can branch into some book discussion on, because apparently there's some pretty good books that have had film adaptations.
Just a couple.
Yeah, so I think everybody who doesn't know already will come to discover my deep and abiding obsession for the Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
impossible not to venture into the books when talking about Lord of the Rings. But yeah, we actually started talking about doing a podcast far before you came on as co-host for Cinematic Realms, and I guess we should get this out of the way because people are going to find out eventually that the idea for that podcast was a Keira Knightley podcast because you and I are teeny tiny little bit obsessed.
Yes, yeah, we were going to have a podcast dedicated to our queen. And we have social media accounts right now. Check us out, Knights of Kira. We have a Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter. But yeah, that was originally kind of what we were going to do. And John, I believe it was the Master and Commander stream. The Our Lord and Savior, which is the YouTube algorithm, picked that up, and since then you've been getting a lot more clicks than normal. And I think you realized after a couple streams after the Master and Commander stream that it was kind of gonna become a thing. And you told me about the stress of finding a guest every single Saturday, and you were doing Thursday before then. So you were giving up your weekends and having to find guests. And there's this thing called scheduling, which I'm kind of obsessed with. So we could kind of put together, I think, our respective talents and make something that kind of takes the some of the stress off of you, and we don't have to worry about getting a guest every single time. It can just be you and me.
Yeah, you may or may not have us scheduled out many months in advance. But yeah, we
Yeah,
have
our
plenty
Google
of.
Doc is lit.
Yeah, we certainly have no shortage of things to talk about. So, why wouldn't you plan stuff out? There's plenty to choose from. But yeah, and I feel like when I asked you to come on, it was kind of like what we're doing now is kind of what I feel like I always wanted to do. I feel like I was sort of, it was almost like it was a transitioning point where I wanted to do something where I was talking, with a friend each week about movies. And like you and I were like instant friends as soon as we actually met in the Here Be Dragons Slack group. Um, and I think you wandered into my my Kira Knightley channel in the Slack, and so I think we discovered we were kind of kindred
Yeah,
spirits
it
at
was
that
called,
point.
I think it was called John's Wife at the time, too.
We don't,
So,
we're not going to talk about that. But yeah,
maybe
but yeah,
we should also do a little bit of an intro of who we each are for some new, hopefully we have some new listeners. That would be awesome. Another good thing about the podcast form is there are some people that just don't watch YouTube videos that might be more inclined to listen to podcasts.
yeah, absolutely. Your background, I think, is far more interesting. So why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah, sure. I don't know about that. Yeah, my name is Amy, so my quote unquote fandom name is Aemy Blackfyre. That's Aemy Blackfyre with a Y. Yeah, and Song of Ice and Fire slash Game of Thrones fans, especially obviously if you read the books because they weren't really mentioned in the show, will recognize that as a kind of a Song of Ice and Fire name. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door as far as coming out as a nerd, very obviously. But I was originally just kind of so basically what I do for my quote unquote day job is that I'm a PhD student and I study Chinese literature, specifically early sci-fi. So I am inclined toward literary criticism and analysis, and that's basically what I do on my blog slash channel slash podcast, where I have on wonderful guests to talk about lots of stuff. And it's like five fandoms now that I'm basically dipping my toes into. So, Song of Ice and Fire, obviously, His Dark Materials, Avatar: Last Airbender, and I'm gonna do X-Men, The Witcher, and John, you may have heard of a little something called the Poppy War.
No,
It's my brand
this
now.
is the very first time I'm hearing
It is
about
my
this.
brand to talk about the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It's amazing, amazing fantasy series. Anyway, so yeah, so my background is that I'm from Oklahoma, so kind of a not very populated state. And I basically was in Spanish class in high school, and my first ever Chinese teacher came in and was promoting taking Chinese. I was like, I'm never going to do that. That's so hard. Um, and then I liked her so much, and I kind of, she showed us pictures of all of the activities they do, like Chinese New Year, and then they go to the Asian market and they go to a Chinese restaurant. So I was like, okay, well, it's a lot more chill than Spanish class. So I took it and I never looked back. So I basically took Chinese for 2 years in high school, and then I got my bachelor's and my master's in Chinese, and now I'm working on my PhD in East Asian Studies. So I just kind of never stopped learning, and I don't want to ever stop learning. Everyone is a lifelong student. And so that's kind of been my love. I grew up watching anime, so I was already interested in East Asia anyway. And, Japanese wasn't offered in high school. And I actually thought I was going to switch from Chinese to Japanese when I got to college, but that didn't happen. I stuck with it, and it's kind of been the love of my life. So it's been over 10 years now I've been studying Chinese. And that's kind of been my foot in the door as far as making content. I really like to look at Eastern symbolism. That's always interested me. Just some other things about me, I guess. I play violin, so I'm very musically inclined, and I like to cook, especially Asian food, obviously. And yeah, I like listening to music, particularly rock and hip hop and some pop music like Ariana Grande, but I'm a little picky, so I don't listen to as much pop as I do hip hop and like nice classic 60s, 70s rock. And I love to read, obviously, is a huge part of my life.
What I take from everything that you just said is that you're a bit of a slacker. No, yeah, it's yeah, and we can't, mention you know, your interest in Ariana Grande without mentioning that you've actually converted me into a fan. Me, who I am famously a classical music lover and film score lover. I'm very not. I'm very much not into contemporary music, but you have turned some switch on in my brain, which I don't know whether to thank you or curse you for that, Amy.
Yeah, and especially lately, so like when quarantine started, I was reading a lot more, and I'm kind of in a rut right now. I can only really read maybe a chapter or two before I have to put like I'm not sitting there and just reading pages and pages like I normally do. But what has increased is my show watching. I'm actually more of a show watcher than a movie watcher, which is why my friendship with John has been so valuable because he has awoken the cinephile within me that I didn't even know was there. Before then, I had this like handful of movies that I'd watch over and over again and really like, but I didn't really open myself up to, the larger genres. And there are certain genres I like that John doesn't necessarily like. I really like horror movies, and I think I like comedy movies a little bit more than him. So I can also fill the holes of in cinematic realms that he may not have as much quote unquote expertise on. And then he, of course, like obviously you and I both talk about film scores a lot. I look at it from a musician's perspective, and you kind of have a larger, looking at the full score yourself itself, and then you obviously have a lot of cinematography and like camera work expertise that I do not. So I think we put us both together, and we're a functioning cinephile.
Yeah, so I guess that's actually a good place to talk a bit about, you know, who I am and sort of my past experience, for lack of a better term. I'm basically a big old movie lover. That's sort of my story. I've ever since I was little, I think I've been pretty much obsessed with films, uh, and so that's kind of lent itself to sort of studying film, but I'm sad to say I haven't actually been to film school, which is something I did want to do. But I've taken film courses in high school and a little bit in college, and then I also worked for a local news station and did a lot of photography and editing and all that. And all the while, I was more and more obsessed with movies. I think I learned a lot of my training, so to speak, from actually listening to audio commentaries and watching behind the scenes documentaries and stuff. But the other big thing about me is that I'm an insanely shy person, which puts me in direct opposition to Amy, who is not shy in the least bit, which is kind of, I had a weird origin story with, well, I guess not all that weird, because it's probably pretty common as far as joining the A Song of Ice and Fire fandom, which was that I was really shy and kept to myself, and then thankfully somebody took me under their wing, that somebody being our wonderful friend Mr. Stephen Stark, who I co-host Here Be Dragons with him, and our friend Nessie. Uh, so
Over at the
basically,
Unspun yarn, check her out.
yes, absolutely. And so basically, I was really shy, but I commented on one of his posts, and I think he recognized that I was a shy person and basically grabbed me by the shirt collar. And, things haven't been the same since. I don't think I certainly wouldn't have met anybody in the Slack group, or you for that matter, Amy. So that's, I'm eternally grateful for that. And it's been a wild ride in the most, weird year to have something like that happen, because we haven't been able to go anywhere. We haven't been able to go to conventions or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's really weird that I've sort of had, this wide exploration of my, you know, becoming more social
Yeah.
in a year when we couldn't be social.
And it's interesting to build what I think are lifelong friendships with people that I've never met in person. It's like I'm online dating everyone. So, and speaking of not being shy too, there's something that I was posting about on Twitter. Follow me at Twitter at Aemy Blackfyre. I was posting pictures of me from undergrad dancing, performing Bollywood dances. I also am trained in Bollywood dancing and love Bollywood movies. So, speaking about not being shy, I literally got on stage and danced, these in many and some of them were kind of pop culture oriented, but some of them were quite, older cultural dances that were not my culture. And I just took it in stride and I had a great time. And so I think I've been publicly embarrassed twice in my life. I whatever part of my brain that is supposed to feel shame for, unless it's I have like certain shame, you know what I'm saying, just like I just that part that's supposed to be embarrassed does not activate in my brain. That does not mean I have anxiety. Let me be very clear. I don't have social anxiety, but I do have anxiety about getting all of my coursework done, being a teaching assistant. I'm constantly worried about, my writing. The second I turn in a paper to my professor, I'm pulling my hair out. So I do have anxiety. I'm just very, very fortunate that it's not social anxiety. And some of that does come from being an only child with parents who adored the crap out of me and, basically made me think I could do no wrong, which also made me a little bit of a narcissist, but that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I very clearly have social anxiety, as evidenced by the fact, like, the whole point of doing this as a podcast, and well, not the whole point, but part of it is that, we don't have to worry about performing in front of a live audience. But even so, like, I could tell as I was just sort of talking about myself a few seconds ago, I was still getting stage fright, just by virtue of the fact that we know that people are going to be listening to this and watching this, but but yeah, I could edit that out later, but I think I'll just let it be because I want to see, like, I think this is kind of the start of a very long journey. So I think it'll be interesting to see me still struggling with, with getting complete thoughts out, and then maybe see how that is a couple years down the road. It'll be interesting to see. But this is a movie channel, so I guess, we can start sort of talking about, us in movies. I mean, I've been a movie lover for such a long time, but as you say, Amy, I've sort of converted you into being more of a movie fan, but surely there were movies growing up that you really loved. So, you know, so what was the favorite movie of Miss Amy Blackfyre?
Little Blackfyre. Yeah, so back in the day, obviously, I, like any little girl growing up, was obsessed with Disney movies, and I had all sorts of VHSs. And actually, something that I rewatched on Disney Plus because they just put it up that I have a lot of fond memories about is the 1997 Cinderella with Brandy and Whitney Houston. So there, I loved musicals. I love when they break into song. It's just really fun. So those were like obviously my first exposure to movies. But as far as something that I liked, kind of early teens ish. Pan's Labyrinth was actually a huge movie for me that kind of changed my life. I think it's one of the best fantasy
It's
films
so
ever
good. Which
made.
by the way, we have done a live stream about Pan's Labyrinth, which we did with Stephen and Cecilia from Geeks Aurelia. So, if any of you are interested in listening to us talk about that
Yeah.
movie, you can head over to John Webster Film on YouTube and check that out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and we are
it's
going to eventually upload the audio from all those YouTube videos on the Cinematic Realms podcast. It's just going to take a little while, so don't wait. Go see it on YouTube.
yeah, I think the reason why I didn't want to do that off the bat was just because obviously we're referencing a lot of visual stuff with those discussions, and they don't necessarily lend themselves to the podcast format, but I do still want people to be able to listen to those if they want. So I think we'll gradually be introducing those as sort of archival episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Pan's Labyrinth is so
It's
good.
so
I
good.
Of course, it drives me crazy hearing you talk about seeing that when you were younger.
I went to
The
Blockbuster to get it, so it's not like it was, just yesterday, John. Um, but beyond that, though, I also really like comedy movies, so I've been a huge fan of Big Lebowski for a long time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that movie over and over. Makes me laugh every single time.
you're out of your element, Donnie.
I love, I love, I love also satirical films like Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story that makes fun of Ray and the Johnny Cash movies. So I love seeing the movies and then seeing the satirical movies that mock them. I always find that really fun, like Scary Movie that mocks all of the scary movies. And then there's Not Another Teen Movie that makes fun of all of the like teenage rom-coms. Um, so I kind of I really like those, but I also think that, kind of the classic sort of, I mean, I guess action movies is kind of the right term, though I don't think you would technically call like the Pirates of the Caribbean as kind of actiony. That's like its own thing. I loved Pirates, especially because in my high school orchestra we played the theme and like the score, and I realized how solid the music in that is.
Well,
Uh,
and what's so great about that score is exactly the thing that I know some film score fans didn't like about it was the fact that it's not what you would expect from a musical score for for a pirate movie,
yeah,
because it's almost like a modern action score.
yeah, and I
It's
like it.
basically it's like a rock and roll score
Yeah.
basically, and that's what's so fun about it. I mean, I remember when that came out, the soundtrack wasn't out like immediately with the film, and I was like, oh my god, when's the soundtrack for that coming out? I have to have it. I have to have it.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the da 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 da. Anyways, I won't hum too much in case that gets us in trouble with copyright. But I also really like obviously I'm into literature. I think books are the best, but I especially like autobiographies and memoirs, and I think movies made out of that, such as John. I think I have this on our long list of movies that's like 400 movies deep. It's called Angela's Ashes, and it was written by Frank McCourt, and he grew up in Ireland during one of the many times when it was very difficult to be growing up in Ireland. And then they actually were in America and went back to Ireland, and so he's kind of a lot of really awful things happened to him, and it was weird for a 12-year-old to like such a depressing movie. But I think I really like movies that show real life that don't show. So it's funny. It's like, oh, Amy likes comedy movies. She likes fantasy movies, but I also like movies that really show the grind, as Amos would say, in The Expanse, the grind of life, especially difficult lives. I find something very compelling about those stories.
Stephen will kill me if I don't correct that. I believe what Amos terms that is the churn.
The churn. Okay,
Yeah.
the churn.
Uh,
To me, it feels like the grind, though. But yeah, the churn.
yeah.
It's this constant, just you still have to keep going, but you're constantly just caught in this web, basically. Yeah, the grind,
Yeah.
the churn. Yeah, good. I'm glad that you corrected me. Otherwise, he'd be adding us, and so would a bunch of other Expanse fans. So I've seen I'm reading the books and I've seen the show. Just so you know, listeners.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten to the books, unfortunately. I mean, there's a long list of books that I want to get to that I haven't gotten to, but I do have the first one, Leviathan Waits. Um, Amy, yes, I know, the Poppy War, the Poppy War. For those listening for the first time, you will hear Amy plug the Poppy War
I have to do
every
it.
single
I'm
time.
being paid by the author. No, I'm not. I'm not being paid by anyone. But yeah, no. So I think I do like a wide variety of movies, but I think I am getting better about this, but I was very picky about what movie I would consider a classic and worth rewatching. I mean, when you say Pan's Labyrinth, that's just automatically setting the bar so high for excellent movies. Um, so there were some movies that I would watch over and over again. And I tend to also like movies that others say aren't as good as the others that the main actor has been in. For example, Jennifer Lawrence. Most people, when they talk about her, they never mention Joy, and I really like that movie. And I think I'm the only one because everyone I talk to about Jennifer Lawrence, they either haven't seen Joy or they saw it and thought it was boring. But like I said, I like those kind of like biography kind of movies that are just about someone's life. We kind of saw that with Hidden Figures, which we covered a couple of weeks ago, where it's just, people dealing with with their own issues and obstacles in life.
Yeah, I have to admit I have not seen Joy.
Most people haven't.
Well, precisely because it wasn't regarded at the
Yeah.
time of release as much of a success. That said, I really do love Silver Linings Playbook.
Yeah,
I
see,
think
most
she's
people I talk to like,
fantastic.
oh yeah, I love Silver Linings Playbook, or I love Hunger Games, or I don't know, I haven't seen the one where she's alone on a ship with Chris Pratt, but that looked dumb to me, so I didn't watch it. But already
Yeah,
throwing shade on Chris Pratt, so
oh, it was bound to happen sooner or
I
later.
mean, I like Guardians, I like Parks and Rec, but he's a butthole. Anyway, in real life, not as an actor. Um, but those are the kind of movies I like, and it wasn't until you and I became friends that I started watching one or two movies a week. That just is not me. I watch shows every day. That's what I do, and I would maybe watch a movie once a month, if that. And I also do. I like superhero stuff. So, I when Wonder Woman the first one came out, I was in costume at the theaters, ready to go. I was so excited. So I also like those kinds of things. But I don't like a lot of action movies as much as you would think I would, because I do like superhero stuff, but I call them those comic book movies. I kind of see them different from action. Like they are in the action genre, but they're their own like branch.
Yeah. I was much more into action movies when I was a teenager. and less so as I've gotten older. I very much gravitate towards dramas. But that said, I mean, my favorite movies of all time are The Lord of the Rings, and always will be, which I think is, those films are a wonderful balance between, they've got action elements and they have drama, and of course, they're fantastic fantasy stories. And I pretty much read the books about I think the year before the first film came out, so it was kind of like an avalanche of an experience for me. I think it hit at just the right time for me.
Yeah.
And
And I think that it's because I like compelling characters that I'm picky about action movies, because they don't focus so much on character development. Whereas Lord of the Rings, even though you do have those fight scenes, if you watch the extended version, which I never watched until you, John, I only watched the cinematic release, or the one that you would see in theaters. The extended version has those moments of character development that I thought it was lacking when I went to see it in theaters.
yeah, I think the extended versions of those movies really show that a story like Lord of the Rings is not entirely compatible with the restrictions of modern sort of movie going conventions, because they had to tell each chapter as, a film, which the studio originally wanted like 2.5 hour movies. Peter Jackson was able to stretch that to 3 hours for the first two, and then 3 hours and 20 minutes for the third film. But it's one big story, and you want to have all those wonderful character beats and those explorations of characters like Faramir, who is almost entirely different in the extended version. You really get the feel of that dynamic between him and Boromir and their father Denethor, that I think is more of a subplot in the theatrical versions that you don't get much of, and I think it's a major feature of the full-length films.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
motivations
just,
of the characters make more sense when you watch the extended, because you kind of understand their psyche and what they're thinking. Um, Darn, I had a thought, but now I forgot. I was gonna make another point about movies, so it would have been on topic. But I don't
that's all
remember what it
right.
was.
Folks, you will get a lot of dropped thoughts in this podcast from both of us. It's just the way it's gonna roll. Um, and then also, circling back around to Akira, of course,
Of course,
which
we gotta
which we
the
will
alpha and the omega.
which we will constantly do. I first saw, I first saw her in Pirates of the Caribbean, which did elicit a, oh my God, who's that? But but it was really Pride and Prejudice in 2005 when I saw that I absolutely fell in love with her as an actress. Um, Gotta make sure I add that little bit at the end. But no, Pride and Prejudice was really transformative for me, just because it opened my eyes to the different kinds of films I could like. And I think that part of me, like in my subconscious, I was already there. Like, I loved films, like romantic musicals were a big thing for me, even if I didn't realize that the romance was why I was into those. But like, I was a big fan of Moulin Rouge, and then, you know, and then Phantom of the Opera when that came out. And so I think there was this part of me who always really responded to romantic stories. And then when I saw Pride and Prejudice, which is, arguably it's marketed and presented as, a romantic movie for women, basically. That's certainly how those films are usually promoted. And I remember I took my mom to see it at the for her birthday, and I was sitting there throughout the movie, and I was like, oh my God, I really hope Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy get together. And
That's one big
and
difference between you and me. I am not a shipper, and you are most definitely a shipper.
yep, guilty. But yeah, it was really transformative, because after I saw that, first of all, I was like looking forward to the next film that Kira and the director Joe Wright were doing, which was Atonement. So I became a fanboy at that point, but also I started to really explore other kinds of movies. And now, it's had an influence even to, if you look the past couple of years, my favorite movies have been things like Emma and Little Women. It's wonderful how it kind of opened my eyes to liking different things. And moving on to shows, we talked about this over on your YouTube channel, the different stuff that I like. Outlander is a big thing for me. I love that show, and that has a wonderful mixture of romance and action and
Yeah.
history and politics.
And a little bit of magic too
Yeah.
with the timey-wimey stuff. Um, and actually one thing that I found interesting is that I've seen more old movies compared to you. So I'm a Hitchcock fan. I've seen a lot of Hitchcock movies. Rear Window is one of my favorites. And also, I was writing them down as I was thinking about it. I love Tennessee Williams. He's my favorite playwright. And so, Streetcar Named Desire, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, I've seen those and love them. The Way We Were, which I'm definitely going to get you to watch, I really, really like that movie. And Dirty Dancing, which you have seen now, and I'm very excited to
And
say.
now I've seen, but here's the thing: like, I have seen older movies. We've just seen, like, I think we prefer different ones, and I haven't seen some of the ones that that you have, but like, I definitely, through my younger years as sort of developing as a cinephile, I very much fell in love with the films of David Lean, like Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia, and of course we're going to be doing Wizard of Oz next week, because who hasn't seen the Wizard of Oz and loves
We're
it?
off
It's
to
like
see The Wizard.
Wizard of Oz is like the ultimate nostalgic film,
Yes, yeah,
because everybody grows up with it,
exactly.
and
It
so
crosses generations.
yeah, exactly. And so I don't think anybody actually can be objective about it either. Which, we're not even going to try to be next week. But
Definitely.
yeah, and like, I had some other older movies that I really love are like The Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, My Fair Lady, which I'm sure you would have a ball dissecting
Oh
if we did
boy,
My Fair
would I?
Lady.
I don't. I kind of like early sci-fi, and I don't care if the writing is good. I don't care how crappy the effects are, because I understand that wasn't available at the time. Like Time Machine, the Time Machine, I really
Yeah,
like that, and it's very obviously not good as far as the special effects, but the general, like, the obviously the book itself and the writing for the movie itself is really well done. And I think that I also do like kind of movies with messages as well. So I've always really enjoyed that. But my mom and I basically would watch Turner Classic Movie Channel and watch all of these old movies, and I would really appreciate them. And we would watch the one where they have the commentary right after the commercial. They would come on and do some commentary and then start the movie back up. And I really enjoyed that kind of format and kind of understanding where a lot of cinematic norms come from and patterns, Hitchcock started a lot of movies that, like, mystery and suspense movies basically are the grandchildren of Hitchcock movies. So I really enjoy seeing that kind of and thinking about shows too. I watch a crap ton of shows, but if we're talking about older shows, I'm a huge fan of the original Twilight Zone. So I've always been into that idea of mysteries and twists. That's what I was going to say earlier. It all comes back around. I like a movie with a twist, so I am like half an M. Night Shyamalan fan. He's kind of dead to me because of the live action Avatar: Last Airbender movie that did not exist. But I really like The Village, Signs, and oh, he did another one that is just not. It's not registering in my head, but
uh,
I like
The
his
Sixth Sense,
The
is
Sixth
that what you
Sense.
think?
Yes, I like those classic M. Night Shyamalan twists in movies when
Which I
they're done
really do,
well.
which I really do think The Sixth Sense is, in my opinion, it's undeniably a classic. Whatever you thought of his later films. I think that's a really incredible movie. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear you say positive things about The Village, because
I
sometimes it seems
love The
like
Village. I just
sometimes
rewatched it a couple
it's
weeks ago.
it seems sometimes like I'm the only one who likes The
No, no.
Village.
You were in good
Um,
company here on this podcast, John. I just rewatched The Village a couple weeks ago. And I was like, is it as good as I remember it? I was like, it was as good as I remember. I freaking love that movie.
like, I know you can poke holes in the logic of some things, but like cinema is not real life. It's there are certain movies that you kind of go along with the conventions of, you know, of the setup for the story
Yeah,
to tell a good story.
yeah,
And I think it's a beautiful love story, and of course, film store lover, the music by James Newton Howard
very well
is
done.
sublime. Those violins, and it's beautiful.
And I just generally like movies that creep me out. I feel creeped out, and The Village did
Hmm.
that. Uh, the Others did that. Also has a twist ending, which I luckily got you to watch. Yay. There was another one I was trying to think of, but yeah, I like movies that make me feel uncomfortable. Oh, Midsommar. I don't know if you've seen that, John. With
I
I
haven't
can
seen
never
that
remember
one.
her name. I always say Frances, but I believe it's Florence Pugh. Is that correct, or is it Frances Pugh?
Flor.
It's
Now you have me second
no,
guessing. No,
no.
it's Florence.
Okay, Florence Pugh. She plays in that. Yeah, I think she's brilliant in that movie, Midsommar, and it's a creepy movie. It's definitely a
Which, by the way,
psychic.
she's gonna be huge.
Oh my God, yeah.
Um,
I loved her. Like, I want you to watch Midsommar just because you loved her in Little Women. It's a totally different part. It's great.
yeah.
It is a freaky movie. I love it so much. I mean, you're not as into the horror elements as I am, but I think you would still like it because of the mystery.
It really depends on the film, because sometimes those sort of creepy elements really work for me. It's the reason why I love Alien so much, is because certainly there's some things with the creature effects in that film that are dated and, not necessarily as scary to a modern audience, but what retains, its genius is the sort of environment of fear and unpredictability of being on a spaceship, where you feel like all that's separating you from, the darkness of space is just this, the spaceship. And and then when you've got things like the, acid blood just burning through the hull, and it's just so frightening to be placed in that situation. And the film is so quiet,
Yeah,
eerily quiet.
yeah.
And so in the right film, like, I do like to be creeped out. It just depends. It really does.
I'm really excited for you to see Midsommar, and we'll talk about it because I think that's one of the films that does that well. It also does silence well, like you were saying. There's a scene in particular that this is not a group watch party movie. I will say that right now. If listeners, if you're like, oh, Midsommar, Amy recommended it, then don't at me when you're like, I tried to watch this with, it has some raunchy scenes in it that maybe you should be with
I'm
friends
sorry,
who
but
or
that
by
just so
yourself.
cracks it so cracked me up when we did a dangerous method, and we just did a watch party with just you and me, and we were like, yeah, this would not have worked
Not a
as
group watch
a
party.
watch party for
My
our group.
favorite. Do you want me to tell the sneezing story?
Yes,
Because
please
that's
do.
one of my favorite stories. So I was in the living room. I'm sorry, I'm cracking up just thinking about it. So we were watching that, and for those of you that don't know, The Dangerous Method, it has spanking scenes in a sexy way, not in a child abuse way. And so what happened was I was in the living room, and a spanking scene happened, and my partner from the other side of the apartment was like, "Bless you, honey." I was like, "No, I didn't sneeze." Later, I told him it was on the TV and Keira Knightley was being spanked, and he was like, "Why didn't you tell me? I would have come in and watched it." So that's my sneezing story about the dangerous method. Yeah,
Oh my
it was
god,
he
that is
because he watched
seriously
half
one
of
of
it.
my.
He watched half of it with me, and then was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go work on something," and he missed all of the good stuff.
That will never not be one of my favorite stories.
So good.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
which by the way, we are going to be starting our our discussions of Keira Knightley's movies on here in well, we say start. Really, we have already started it over on the YouTube channel, but for the podcast iteration, uh, we're actually going all in, and we're creating a proper series for our discussions
And
of
it's
her movies.
about time, John.
Yeah, it's because we're basically doing our original plan of doing a Keira Knightley podcast
We're
within this
sneaking it
podcast.
in
Exactly.
in the
It's
cinematic
gonna
realms.
the series is gonna be called the Nightly Hour, which we have our friend Yogi to thank for that name.
Thank you, Yogi. Check out Through
Yeah,
the Moon Door. Moon Door is 2 words. It's
yeah.
on it's a podcast form and on YouTube.
And so on the first one, which will be the week after we do Wizard of Oz, and we'll have our first special guest on the podcast, who will be none other than Lady Triple, Christina, will be coming on to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, The
Very
Curse of the
exciting for
Black
that.
Pearl.
And if you go to our YouTube channel and you check out the episode we did on Nightmare Before Christmas, you will see what happens when Christina and I are on the same channel / podcast. We go crazy. It's great. I love
Which
talking to
is
her. She's
why,
been on my channel as well to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. She's going to be on my channel a lot more, so definitely you guys are lucky that Christina graces us with her presence so much.
she is amazing, and it's going to be a riot. We're not opposed to having more than one guest, uh, on, even though we probably won't be doing it as much here on the podcast as we were doing on the YouTube live streams. But in the case of Christina, I figured with you and her is pretty much that's all we can handle.
I know
So
you're gonna introduce the podcast and you're gonna get to say 2 lines about the film score and otherwise. But I mean, for Pirates, I feel like you're gonna inject yourself a little bit more. You're gonna be like, but Kira though,
yeah,
and dear listeners, something that John and I want you to know, if you don't already, it's that Kira's character is the main character of the first 3 Pirates movies.
absolutely.
So you think it's Jack, but no.
And you say the first 3, but there's only 3. Amy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Elizabeth Swann is the protagonist of
Yes.
Pirates of the
Yeah.
Caribbean, and that's
Jack
all
Sparrow
there is to it.
is the comedic relief. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's that.
Send your emails to
To Aemy Blackfyre. No, I'm just kidding. That's not my email. Haha, nice try, everyone.
but yeah, that's gonna be a blast. I'm very much looking forward because I feel like, especially in this format, we can sort of unleash our, our
No
sort
live
of
shaming of our lust.
exactly.
Basically.
We can go all out.
Go all out. That's going to be fun. Yeah, we're going to be able to release then. Yeah, so we've got basically what's coming up for March is, like we said, Wizard of Oz and then Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'm just going to go ahead and reveal the other 2 movies. We're going to
Yeah, go
talk
ahead.
about X-Men 2. We talked about the first movie a little bit ago. So check that out if you want to do it in order. But X2 is the best X-Men movie, so you could probably just totally listen to it by itself. And yeah, that's going to be fun. We're going to talk about X2. I am a huge X fan, and John is a fan of the movies and also the animated series along with me. But I read the comic. But I actually also read the comics, so I'm gonna be very excited about that. And we're gonna end March with The Little Mermaid. So we are going to be a part of your world in your ears as a great podcast talking about our love of The Little Mermaid. And that's going to be really fun because it's not my favorite of the Disney princess movies. It's actually probably my second or third favorite because my number 1 is what I'm talking about for my birthday episode in May, which is Mulan.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my God, this is brand new information.
Mulan is the best. I love it. But yeah, we're going to talk about The Little Mermaid. I'm really excited for that, and I promise I will only break out into song 3 times.
Yeah, if we get flagged for copyright with that, then that's just the way it's going to have to be because...
I'll sing it terribly so that it doesn't get... No, I'm just kidding. We'll lose listeners.
But yeah, I have to say my personal favorite, of course, no surprise to you, Amy, it's Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
Which once again goes back to like I should have known as a kid just by how much I
That
love
you were
Beauty
into
and the Beast.
romance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm trying to think what I mean, admittedly, my other favorite as a kid was Aladdin. So I did love these sort of stereotypical, boys Disney movie. Um, but my heart always skipped a beat when the big song came on. What's oh God,
Part
a
of your
whole new
world?
world? No, whole
Yes.
new world.
Oh, whole new world. Okay, I'm sorry. I
Um,
didn't know if we were talking Little Mermaid or Aladdin. Yeah, very kind of sort of similar meanings actually. Those or messages. Yeah. No, actually, I was just singing that a couple of days ago in the kitchen with my partner. It was really fun. Yeah. I do like the Disney princess movies, obviously, but another I I kind of just like anything that Robin Williams was able to lend his voice to, like in Ferngully
yes.
where he plays Batty. He was such a talent, and the world is so much darker without him. I just think that he really brought everything to any role, whether it was his voice or live action. And so I've always been a huge Robin Williams
It
fan.
didn't seem real when they
Yeah.
announced, that he had died. He just seemed like one of those people who would always be there.
Yeah, an
You
icon.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, that was, yeah, I don't mean to bring down the mood, but
Yeah.
I really felt that my childhood was better because Robin Williams was in it. And the thing about him is that a lot of comics make jokes by putting others down, and that wasn't his style. I really liked his
Yeah.
style of comedy. He wasn't an insult comic, which I'm not saying is bad. I like a good roast just as much as the next comedy fan. But when I go to see
I'll keep
to
that in mind.
see stand-up comedy. When I go to see stand-up comedy, I either prefer kind of Robin Williams humor, and also I really like the kind of self-deprecating humor that a lot of comedians do. So I'm also a huge fan of stand-up comedy. Is another interesting thing about me. I suppose you could call that interesting. Um, but I just actually I saw some really amazing stand-up in LA right before the quarantine started, and I was very sad because I was looking forward to going back. I've been to Second City in Chicago, so I'm really into stand up, and that's I think why I like comedic movies. But going back to the Little Mermaid, I'm definitely gonna do a little bit of feminist analysis, so it'll sound like I have problems with the movie, but overall, I freaking love that movie. I had the VHS of it, and I would watch it over and over and over again. And I had the version where after the movie ended and the credits were done, there was this like music video of the woman who sung all of Ariel's songs, and she was walking on the beach singing "Part of Your World," and like I still remember that with like the waves crashing and the classic '90s thing where they have a shot of the person's kind of profile, and then it fades away into the crashing waves. So I love the Little
Oh,
Mermaid,
the
but
90s. You
oh,
aged
the
so
'90s
well.
back in the day. I remember them fondly. Anyway, but so when we do talk about things like the Little Mermaid and others that have some problematic elements when it comes to love and gender, I'm gonna point that out. But it's all out of love for the material. That's something you need to know about me. I'm huge into feminist analysis.
It's like, it's funny. I've obviously become more aware of all that stuff as, I've grown older, and especially over the past couple of years. And I think being part of this community has sort of opened my eyes to a lot of things too. But I'll also admit, when I sit down to watch, my Disney movies, I tend to just retreat back into being the little kid version of myself. I'm like, no, don't complain about my favorite movie. But no, yeah. And no, I think it's good to call out those things and just recognize them, but we can still enjoy the movies for what they were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that, you know, I don't necessarily think that as a little girl I was necessarily negatively impacted, but that was a lot
Hmm.
because of the support of my mom and her raising me in a feminist way. So, little
Yeah.
girls who are already maybe in an environment that treats them differently because because of the way they were born, I do think it can be bad. But Disney's hashtag woke now, John, so they fixed everything. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah.
No problems there.
Please don't come after us, Disney.
And
We would very much like to talk
we
about
need
your
to get an
movies, so
intern who will
please let us.
answer all our hate mail.
Yeah, I think, like, what are we going to talk about if we couldn't talk about Disney, because they pretty much own everything now. So,
Right?
I mean, obviously, I think, you know, whether there are main topics for a given episode or not, I think we're going to be talking about a lot of Disney Plus stuff for the foreseeable future. I mean, they've got like a Marvel show lined up for every, couple of months this year, and then
Seriously.
between that and the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, they've got a lot going on. And, that's I was complaining about Disney not embracing the streaming era, and now it feels like there are dictators, so I feel like I'm not happy no matter what. But that being said, I watch a lot of Disney Plus. So, I mean, the X-Men animated series is on there, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, I've been trying to. I mean, you can't lose out on that. I've been trying to sort of compact down. It's funny, I'm making these motions with my hands, but people listening to the podcast won't be able to see this. This is a video exclusive for all you people. No, but I've been trying to sort of compress down which streaming services I need, but like Disney Plus is like the one where you can't possibly get rid of it because they've got all the best properties right now,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, and I also have Peacock because of Parks and Rec. I love to have that on in the background too while I'm studying because I've seen it so many times at this point that I need to pick me up right now. I think a lot of people right now during quarantine have comfort movies and comfort shows that they're going back to, and I think the 1997 Cinderella was one for me. I watched that, and I've been kind of watching things that are nostalgic and also just kind of make me feel good. And I think that that's one of the things that cinema and TV shows can do, which is they can help you escape, at least just for a little bit. And I think escapism is a big part of entertainment.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just some time ago. I remember I was down about something. I don't remember exactly right now what it is, and I probably wouldn't mention it on the air anyway. But I remember I was down about something, and then you were like, "Hey, you want to just watch something?" And we turned on The Princess Bride,
Mm-hmm.
and that did the trick. I mean, it's that again is another one of those great nostalgia hits.
Yes,
So
that
it
was
was
really
great
fun.
to do that. And we've been, speaking of X-Men the animated series, we've been doing watches of that, and that's just made me feel like a little kid again. That's the greatest thing in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do complain about the streaming services because everyone was going, "Oh, we don't need cable anymore. We can do this." Well, now it's as expensive, if not more, to have all these streaming services. And they have these tiers, right? You have the basic account, but then you have the premium account. And so you have to pay more in order to not get ads or in order to unlock all the seasons of the show that you want to watch. So I hate that it seems like if you want the full experience of entertainment, you have to kind of be at a certain level of financial security. Like I'm watching on all of my partner's accounts. I'm not pay other than Netflix. I'm not paying for anything. So
Yeah,
it's not
it's,
great.
it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of seeing what I can get rid of, because Netflix, I think, is kind of the notorious one of they keep raising their prices.
Yeah.
And especially, I just got a brand new 4K TV, and if I want to take advantage of that, I've got to have the premium service basically. But it's like, what is it? I think it's about to go up to like $18 a month.
And if they weren't canceling shows left, right, and center, maybe I'd be a little more forgiving. But instead, they keep canceling great shows,
Like,
such as
say,
Age of Resistance.
the Dark
Yes,
Crystal Age of Resistance.
yes. And so, if you're going to up the price, then have more options. So and Netflix, you know that they're going to be fans of the pod, so I'm sure their CEO is going to listen to this. But it's just that if you're going to raise the prices, then offer new things or better what you already have. But don't just, I mean, they really are just banking on the fact that people are going to think that feel that they can't be without it, and they're going to pay the price anyway, basically, which is true for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm still super sour about the Dark Crystal thing.
I
Uh,
will not get over it.
and like, it's not even. What also makes me angry is they haven't even announced the season that we got for. And folks, you're gonna hear me go on and on about physical media, um, but they haven't announced a Blu-ray release for the show, and it's like I don't want to depend on Netflix, the show that canceled it, to forever revisit what I think is going to become a classic to stand next to the original film.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to actually own it, and in the best possible quality, and to actually own it. Like, heck, even for people who aren't into physical media, they should be able to like buy a digital copy, from other online retailers and not just Netflix.
Yeah.
That's a problem with a lot of these streaming exclusive shows, is that you can only get them through the streaming services, which I get for like the first year or so.
But
That
after
that
that, it
makes
becomes a
sense.
monopoly, and yeah,
Yeah,
especially when you're a big part of a fandom. It's, it- it feels like, like Game of Thrones, you can like buy it. You go into your iTunes and buy all the seasons digitally, or you can buy them on physical media. Like there are other options, and it feels like yeah, they're going to get some of the profits. I don't understand why they're so controlling about it, because it feels more like everyone's. It feels more like, the fans altogether, can appreciate it and have it, instead of, some big company kind of dictating, the availability of something. Netflix could just take it down tomorrow, and then there would be no place to watch it unless you pirate it. Um,
yeah. Just imagine that. That's a basically a you know it's a 10-hour. It's people have loved the Dark Crystal for years and years, and it's been like an under 2-hour movie, and now you've got 10 hours of beautiful storytelling that, yes, it could have and should have gone on for longer, but they canceled it. As mad as I am about that, that's just the way it goes sometimes. But I don't want that 10-hour masterful piece of storytelling to just disappear if Netflix decides we don't need to have it on our service anymore.
yeah, and
And
they've already proven themselves fickle about, just cancel. They had
yeah,
even I hadn't seen this show, so I can't even remember the title of it, but they had renewed a show for 2 seasons and unrenewed, which is, I don't even, I've heard of shows getting not renewed because I'm a fan of the CW, and that's basically my life as a CW fan, is that it's very possible
yeah.
that that show that you're obsessed with is not going to make it for another season. But so I'm used to something like the CW where they're like, "Okay guys, hope you enjoyed that season. It's the last one." But I've never heard of, you're going to get season 3 and 4, and then all of a sudden, "Oh, JK, well, pandemic." Well, yeah, the pandemic is affecting everyone. I don't understand, I've heard of, Amazon Prime and Disney Plus have actually ramped up a lot of stuff. So I don't know. And so Netflix, really the only thing I can think of is The Witcher. That's what they seem to be banking on right now.
Yeah.
Which, hey, I'm not against. I'm a huge fan of the
Yeah,
books,
which
and I
is
loved the first season. But there are so many other possibilities and other fandoms that you can be tapping into. It seems like they're kind of, their strategy for quarantine is to just like cower in a corner and hope it goes away, and that's not a very good idea.
and in fairness, like Dark Crystal is the one show that I get, quarantine throwing a monkey wrench into, because while all this stuff is going on, you're not going to have a bunch of puppeteers, all close together doing something. So maybe they just thought, rather than waiting until some undetermined time, they just pull the plug on it. I don't like it, but I can understand it.
Yeah,
What continues to make me mad, though, is, like I said, I want that show available to, like, actually purchase, so
definitely.
that
And they did
it
renew
lives
Blood
on.
of Zeus, which is an animated show, for second season, which I was glad for because everyone could work from home on an animated show. So I was glad to hear that. So Netflix is still on my shit list, though. I'm sorry, they just are.
Yeah.
I love how our introductory episode turned into just shitting on Netflix, but that's what you're gonna get with John and Amy. We talk about what we want to talk about.
Well, yeah, I wanted this first episode to just kind of go wherever, wherever it needed to go. But that said, it's like, I think we get so annoyed by it because we love their product. I mean, Dark Crystal was amazing, and The Witcher is great. I'm glad that The Witcher will be continuing on, because I thought the first season was absolutely fantastic. It was a bit of a surprise for me because I was like, "What's this Henry Cavill in a white wig?" Um,
Yeah,
it
so it's
just,
like, oh, Henry Cavill's all of a sudden a Targaryen. What's going on?
yeah,
Though that did really show though what they could do with the eye colors because they had him with the yellow eyes and then they had Yennefer with the purple eyes. So it does show that
yeah.
you can have these fantasy features and make it work. And I think for some of them they were contacts and some of them they were post edits. So, House of the Dragon, maybe take note about that. So, hot D? Anyway, I'm pumped. I'm so hyped. Uh,
I will never accept that.
hot
Okay,
D.
no.
Hot
House of the Dragon.
D.
I'm gonna be now. We're just gonna get hate mail from Sanri and Matt and a bunch of people. They'll be like, not directed at you, directed at me. They'll be like, "No, John, it's
It's
Hot
hot
D."
D. Anyway,
Um,
but yeah.
but yeah, it's no. I mean, and that show is great because, aside from the fact that it took me off guard, because I wasn't expecting it to be so good, it also really turned me into a big Henry Cavill fan. Because, people have been sort of singing his praises for years. I'm not a huge fan of his Superman films. And that's, getting into the whole Zack Snyder thing would be a whole nother can of worms. We'll save that for another time. But I really love his performances as Geralt. I would not have guessed that he could do something so different from what he usually does, but he's fantastic in that.
And I have not seen Enola Holmes. I know you have, but I can't wait to see it just because had to get so buff for The Witcher that now there are parts that it just looks awkward for him to play because he's looks like a guy that spends all day at the gym. So, you
I didn't
know,
really think
you
about
didn't really
that,
think
but
about
that's
it?
true.
Okay.
It's
Like there are
yeah. I
certain
guess it
parts
is.
where it's like he'll actually have to lose muscle mass to kind of make that work. I don't know.
It's like that's a very in shape Sherlock Holmes. I
Yes.
didn't even think
I
about
mean,
it.
Sherlock Holmes is like sitting at home, playing the violin and what was he supposed to do? Was it cocaine or heroin he did? Anyway, he's also like doing drugs. Like he was like a skinny kind of guy, but he wasn't supposed to be buff. But anyway, that's
Yeah,
beside the point. But it's just
but I
hilarious
mean,
that Henry Cavill like got. It's like when Chris Pratt he was in Parks and Rec and he was kind of this like kind of a little bit overweight, kind of, awkward guy. And then all of a sudden he's super buff Star Lord. And it's like, oh, he's going to have to gain some weight for some parts after this because he looks really buff.
yeah, I will say that Henry Cavill's take on Sherlock Holmes, it's slightly different for this iteration because it's not the usual
I'll have to check it
story.
out. Yeah.
So, um,
Do
but
they
no,
make
I
him
enjoy.
still a high functioning sociopath or?
He's not really the more sociopath. He's really, it shows him to be really smart, but he's kind of taking on the role of the good brother between him and Mycroft, where Mycroft is the real grump uh, and arguably appalling person.
I'm
Um,
excited. I gotta check it out. I know something that we have coming up, dear listeners, is an Oscar special. We're going to nominate our own 2020 movies and actors and directors and all
yeah,
that. And so I'm gonna watch a crap ton of 2020 movies in the span of like a month and a half. So that's gonna be fun. And Enola Holmes is definitely on the list.
yeah, we're gonna do that the week of the Oscars, and we'll basically be disregarding the actual Oscar nominees, and
We all know
just
that the Cinematic Realms Award, first annual Cinematic Realms Awards, are going to be way more of a great, of a syndicated and important affair. So
yeah, because our you know, because I don't think anybody can argue with our choices because we have unquestionable
expertise and credentials.
expertise and cred,
Yes.
yeah. But no, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I kind of did that every year when I was younger. It's like I was that nerd who, like, at my workplace, I actually, like, around Oscar season, I actually typed up like my own nominations.
So you're like
And
the was it the March Madness people that like they have
yeah,
brackets and yeah, that's great.
exactly. uh and of course nobody, it was like, yes, John, we see
Okay,
your
John.
list. Okay, very
Yeah.
good.
Um,
But yeah, no, we're gonna have a blast doing that, and it'll be interesting to see how our lists differ. Because
I know
while
one
yeah,
way they're gonna differ already, but
yeah,
hmm
but yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and yeah, and we're gonna have a lot of fun movies on the horizon, and um, as stated, we're going to have basically our monthly installments of the Nightly Hour. So we'll be covering, different Kira Knightley movies. And then
yeah, something else we talked about, John, is we're gonna continue. It's gonna be not very often because we have to watch a ton of movies for it, but we're gonna continue our focus on series where we focus on an actor or director, hoping to also do maybe a costume designer. Anyway, where we look at 3 to 5 movies from that person and then look at all of them. We did it for Quentin Tarantino and Miss Keira Knightley herself, obviously. So we're going to continue that, and we're talking about maybe doing some kind of theme studies or study just one character from a film. So we're hoping to do some more macro and also some more micro focus. So like focusing on just one character from a film, or we could focus on maybe a general theme of a movie or even a theme across movies. We're kind of wanting to shake it up a little bit because we're basically scheduled through the first part of June where we're just looking at one movie each time, and we're hoping to kind of branch out a little bit, aren't we, John?
yeah, and also, and I think this episode was a bit of a test run. Also, we're going to be sort of loosening up the format of each of our episodes where we are going to have a topic that we're going to discuss, but we're also going to feel free to maybe at the beginning of the show just talk a bit about maybe what we've been watching that week and maybe some news, in the film and TV world. And so that, we're not sort of stringently sticking to, okay, the podcast is starting, we have to start on this discussion point about the film we're talking about. So it can be, we can cover some other fun stuff that pops up during the week. And I think it'll be fun to do. And I had fun just bouncing around topic to topic today. So I think that'll be a good way to go.
Yeah, I think so. And John and I both listen to podcasts just as consumers, and I always appreciate podcasts that kind of have sort of cold opens where they're just hanging out and you kind of get to know the hosts a little bit better and you start to feel like they're your friends. And so, dear listeners, we want to be your friends just talking about movies with you. Obviously feel free to follow us on social media. John is at John Webster Film on Twitter and I'm at Aemy Blackfyre. So feel free to follow us and comment on our posts and talk about movies with us. That'll be really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd really love to see some feedback from you guys, and just tell us, what you're thinking about some of the stuff that in the case of today, we covered a wide range of topics. So just go ahead and follow us and tell us your thoughts on some of the things we talked about, and then as we discuss, in particular movies and shows, you can send us your thoughts on that, and maybe we'll mention some stuff when we go to record. But yeah, we'd love to have some interaction with you guys. So please get in touch.
Yeah, because
And
we're going to be
yeah,
announcing what we are going to cover. And actually, I remember the first stream. Now I say episode because we're a podcast. The first episode I was on was about Mad Max Fury Road, and we had our good friend Pat Spinagle had a really interesting point about the movie and about its kind of place within the Mad Max, canon. And he commented on Twitter, and we quoted him on the episode. So if you reach out to us before we record, then you might be featured.
Pat's a good guy, even though he and I do not see eye to eye on Batman Returns.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you guys fighting on Twitter, and I literally used the gift as like fight, fight, fight. I love a good Twitter fight.
Which I take it that he's probably more of a sort of Batman purist in that regard. I mean, I don't know that for certain. I don't want to.
Don't speak for Pat, John.
I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but like part of the reason why I love Batman Returns so much is because it is such an outlandish Tim Burton movie. So I think that's
It's
where
a
I
different
come from.
aesthetic, I think, is kind of a
Yeah.
lot of. But yeah, so please interact with us on Twitter. And, if you're not a Twitter person, we're on YouTube, which means you can comment on the videos. But if you want to get a jump on knowing what we're covering and all of that, Twitter is the way to go. So you can check that out. And if you don't have a Twitter, you can't really comment, but you can at least see what we're up to and, comment on that. And I hope you guys will also check out my channel and my podcast, which is just Aemy Blackfyre. So, and you
Yeah,
don't search Aemy Blackfyre on YouTube. You have to do youtube.com/Aemy Blackfyre because it will keep thinking you want to say army. So YouTube will just not, it won't recognize it. It's one of the most annoying things. I didn't think about that when I picked my my name. So I was just
Wait,
thinking about being clever.
What do you mean pick your name? That is your name.
Yes, it's on my birth certificate. It's AEMY because that's how you spell Amy. Totally, it's not weird. And then Blackfyre with a Y because that's also totally legit last name. So yes, my parents are Mr. and Mrs. Blackfyre. Just kidding. My mom didn't change her name. So
That said, if you just simply search for John Webster Film,
yes, yours
you will
actually
see,
shows up.
Yeah, my videos actually show directly up. There's not even any other stuff.
And
That
I
gets
haven't actually
mixed in
checked
with
to
it.
see if you search Cinematic Realms, if it works. Have you done it?
I don't know. I don't
Live
think I've
research,
tried it.
everyone. Here it comes. Well, not live because we're recording, but I'm doing it right now. All right.
And it's interesting because some of our
It does
views
not
have,
show up, so make sure to search John Webster Film.
and some of our
Oh,
views,
it does at the bottom, so you have to scroll a little bit, but then you'll find it.
Okay.
So you can search Cinematic Realms, just scroll a little bit.
I will say some of our views have come from people searching John Webster Film, which I assume are probably family members of mine. 'Cause I don't know like who else would get there through just searching for it, because it seems like everybody else knows us on Twitter anyway. So
Yeah, so if you search Cinematic Realms and scroll down a bit, you'll find it. But yeah, what's the fun part about the YouTube, especially the early videos, is that John formatted a lot of great pictures and puts those up as the discussion goes. So it's a lot more of kind of a visual experience, and you get to see, the live chat when we were talking with our friends. And that is one thing I will miss, is the live engagement where we get to see, live reactions from our friends. But it was getting to the point where, I love my friends, but I don't want to give up my Saturday night for them every single week.
yeah, and as much as I enjoyed that live interaction, I also have really enjoyed tonight just getting to, which by the way, that gives away that we're recording this at nighttime, that we have been able to just have a conversation. I've still been a little bit nervous. I think I'll have to get over that, but I feel much more relaxed, and like we can have a down there with conversation versus when we're performing for an audience.
Yeah, and I have this constant distraction from the chat and watching it and seeing, oh, do I need to respond? Do I need to say something? Do I need to put it on screen? And that often makes me not listen to other person as carefully. And, especially when we have on guests, I want to hear every word they're saying and be able to, respond to their finer points of what they're saying. So I think that this is going to turn out well. And I also am hoping that this will broaden our listener base just because podcast form is so accessible. You could put us in your pocket and go to the store.
Yeah, that's why, especially if you guys are listening to us just through the podcast, we would love to hear from you because we've obviously gotten most of our feedback from the community. That's, 'cause there's a large community of people who watch, the YouTube streams in sort of our circle, and so we get to hear from those people, very often. It would be nice to interact with some of you who maybe are coming to us from a different place. So definitely get in touch. But yeah, it's this was a lot of fun, and and we went for about an hour and 20 minutes. I think that worked out good, and yeah.
So we'll be back next time to talk about the Wizard of Oz.
Which
we're gonna follow the yellow brick road.
And you're going to get to talk about monkeys.
Monkeys. Oh my god. My second favorite animal to talk about. The first is the phoenix, and I know it's technically mythical, but whatever.
And so Wizard of Oz next week, then the week after that, Pirates of the Caribbean, because we didn't do it straight away, but we had to dive into our Kira coverage.
The nightly hour is coming at you hard. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are Kira fans, hopefully you're listening, we just did A Dangerous Method. We've done The Duchess. Back in the day, John did Pride and Prejudice with our good friend Jared, who is another Knight of Kira. And we did that Focus On series on Kira Knightley. So check those out on YouTube. And those will one day be up in podcast form. We have a lot of back episodes to upload. It'll take a while.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great stuff that I do want to make sure that you all get a chance to listen to. I had the pleasure of doing an interview with Doug Adams, who wrote the book, The Music of the Lord of the Rings films. And then shortly after that, we did 3 weeks of, back-to-back discussions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy with a bunch of our friends. So yeah, so there's some good stuff. If you want to check those out on YouTube, go ahead and go to the John Webster Film channel. Otherwise, we will hopefully have those in a little while. Not right away, but they'll be uploaded sooner or later. But yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. I guess we didn't really do the usual thing where we plug other stuff, because we talked about what's coming up, but Amy, like, what are you working on your channel?
Yeah, so I have a lot of things coming up. I have this thing called Buddy Banter. John was on the very first one, the inaugural episode, where my buddy picks a topic and we talk about it. And our good friend Yogi over at Through the Moon Door, once again, Moon Door is 2 words, he likes Kung Fu Panda. And we're going to talk about the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. And we're going to have a good time. Since I'm in Chinese studies, I'll get to talk about the integration of martial arts and Chinese symbolism, and just have a good time talking about dumplings and the cute.
Once again, I just love the wide spectrum of this series.
Yeah,
it's great.
So my other Buddy Banter episodes, and if you are a podcast listener, you can just check me out. I'm now finally on Apple podcasts, and I'm on Spotify, I'm on Podbean, Anchor, all the places. And yeah, and I've talked about what I talked about with John was gender stereotypes and how that affects the media that we consume. So I kind of talked about growing up as a young woman and what I was told I should and shouldn't like. John talked about growing up as a young man, what he should and shouldn't like. We had a blast, and it was also quite personal. And then I talked to Micah about DC movies and shows. And I talked to my good friend Lo the Lynx, and they wanted to talk about politics and fantasy, which John blessedly could not come to that live stream because we would have butted heads. But that was
I would have agreed with every
single thing, as you are wont to do. So we talked about that, and then so this is going to be my 4th episode. It's the only time I live stream on my channel. So if you are a fan of live streaming and live chatting, you can come do that. And It changes when we do it based on my buddy's schedule. So please definitely follow me on Twitter because I plug the crap out of everything I do on there. Trust me, you will not miss what's coming up if you follow me on YouTube. Yeah, my Song of Ice and Fire content. I've got two major things coming up. I love Mulan. If you know me, you know I love Mulan. I'm going to talk about the kind of the Mulan originally comes from a poem. So I'm going to talk about her kind of in the poem and also representation in Disney and compare that to two characters in A Song of Ice and Fire that quote unquote cross dress. So specifically Brave Danny Flint and Alaris slash Sorella, which is basically confirmed that they're the same person. And so I'm going to do that and kind of talk about women dressing as men to enter masculine spaces. And I'm going to have Lo on to talk about that because Lo the Lynx, my dear friend, they are working on an essay about Liana and being the Knight of the Laughing Tree. And then I'm going to have an essay and a video about black and white and yin and yang symbolism, the Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm going to have Bron Steries on to talk about that because he wrote an essay, I guess, going on a year ago about that. He does also symbolism. He rarely writes, but when he does, it's fabulous. So I'm going to have him on.
I'm sorry, did you mean yin and yang?
Oh my God, John. I want to strangle you through the computer. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing for his Dark Materials. I'm going to do 2 character studies. One is going to be on Mary Malone, and the other is going to be on Marissa Coulter, specifically monkey imagery in her storyline, because I'm obsessed with monkeys. My first ever essay was on Tyrion Lannister and monkey imagery, and you never have to read a word of what I write. I read them to you in the essay, in the episode, and I have someone on to talk about that topic. We have a really good time. And I'm starting my X-Men content. I'm so excited, John. I'm having Kelly, aka Jaded Redhead, on. Jaded Redhead. I'm just kidding. Jaded Redhead. I'm having Kelly on. She, like me, loves the comics, and we're going to talk about them by saga, not necessarily chronologically. And we're starting with the Phoenix Saga. If you are not a comics reader, you are welcome anyway. We are going to talk about it as if you don't know anything except maybe seeing the movies. So we're going to have a really good time. And yeah, that is all the plugs for my channel, but I have to say, Nessie over at the Unspun Yarn deserves your sub. She's amazing. She does mythology and lore, and I'm going to be streaming on her channel this Wednesday, the February the 24th, which will definitely happen after you've listened to this because this is a recording. But you should watch it even if you can't check it live. Check it out live. We are going to be talking about the Phoenix and Phoenix imagery. And I've asked Nessie, and she's graciously approved me downloading the audio from that when we're done and putting it up on my podcast as a bonus episode. So if you follow my podcast, you can listen to it. But please check out Nessie over at the Unspun Yarn. She has been doing some Arthurian legends, and this Phoenix episode is going to be a part of her Magical Menagerie series where she talks about mythical beasts. I've been on to talk about what else but monkeys, and I've also been on to talk about sphinxes, and she has done like a 4-parter on dragons, and she did one on unicorns. So you definitely need to check out Nessie. John co-hosts with her over at Here Be Dragons, and it's a shame she does not have more subs. She so deserves it. And I'm also on her channel for BTP, Bleep the Patriarchy. Bleep it, y'all, where we do some fabulous feminist analysis. Our next episode is also going to be with Kelly, aka Jaded Redhead. And we're going to talk about nautical nonsense. It's going to be called Bleep Ahoy. And we're going to talk about all of the sexism and misogyny that surrounds sailing culture. So we're going to have a good time. Sorry, it was a huge plug, but you know what? This is a recording, and I don't have people in the chat being like, okay, Amy, it's been 20 minutes. And Steven is not on here to say you can plug only 3 things. So I just went all out.
I believe it's only been 19 minutes. No.
Have you heard of the Poppy War? There, I'm going to take up the last minute.
I don't believe
I am going to start doing The Witcher and Poppy War content. Once again, I also do Avatar The Last Airbender, X-Men, His Dark Materials, and A Song of Ice and Fire. Okay, no, I'm done, I promise.
I just want to also mention, again, I do the Here Be Dragons YouTube stream with my brother and sister, Stephen Stark and Nessie the Questing Beast. So please check that out. That's on Sundays at 6 p.m.
Eastern. Because that's
Eastern,
apparently
yes.
the master of all time zones. I mean, people in Eastern time.
Yeah, get over it. No.
I won't.
Okay. But yeah, I guess that wraps it up. We certainly covered a wide
We
range of
did. We
topics.
really went at it.
We went all over the place.
These are
But
kind of
yeah,
like our phone calls, though. It's like all
yeah,
over the
exactly.
place and very long. It's great.
Um, okay. Yeah, I guess that's it. It's our first time out, so I'm not really sure the appropriate way to close this out. But I will just say, come back. Well, I say come back like it's a live stream. It's like
Listen to
check
our
out,
next episode.
listen to our next episode, which will be all about the Wizard of Oz and probably some other stuff that we'll throw in there. We'll see.
Monkeys.
And we'll see what happens over the next week. We might.
We'll definitely get to talk
yeah.
about Wicked. So if you're a Wicked fan,
Oh,
check out that episode.
We are so gonna talk about Wicked and defying gravity.
Defying that gravity.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you everybody for listening or watching, and we will see you next week. Until then, this has been the Cinematic Realms podcast.
Keep watching movies, everyone.